and all the slokas and sutras of the revealed scriptures. Without her, O shining ones, all the worlds would be like clouds with no rain. She is the perfect I consciousness, existing in all the multitude of words, and the secret of all the mantras, whose very being is the essence of non-duality. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. And we welcome you to this class on the New Year's after Kalpataru Day has passed, and just prior to that, Holy Mother's birthday and Christmas. So it's a very auspicious time. Sarva Mangala Mangalie. It's one of the most auspicious times in the year. And we want to present a class to you today that's just an hour long. Instead of the usual 3-hour offering on Sunday, we decided to start the new year out with a new precedent and begin to give people a little smaller bites, Brahman bites if you want to call them that are able to be viewed on a busy week or even a busy weekend these days in our lives, easily and quickly, and then later to be taken into deep contemplation and realized these profound truths of Indian Dharma. So the subject being mantra and how it destroys karma. So it's a very profound subject, and you could say probably about it as an introduction, all around the world, hour to hour, day to day, year upon year, beings are repeating and reciting these sacred formulas consisting of words. They're called mantras, sometimes slokas, sutras, suras. They're also called mahavakyas, great sayings. So from Aham Brahmasmi to Allahu Akbar to Om Namah Shivaya to Jai Shri Ramakrishna to Hail Mary, full of grace, to Om Tari Tari Turi Swaha. Various traditions of the world have these profound collections of words, which we call mantras, and then they're stored up in scriptures in terms of collections of slokas and sutras, like the Yoga Sutras and the slokas of the Upanishads. So these are being emanated out from inside, from the storehouse of Shakti power. It all comes from Shakti, so we want to look at that, at her, as I started chanting this morning, really as the original source and the primal cause of all of this wisdom transmission that's going on, that some people in the world are fortunate enough to pick up on. Others lagging behind maybe still have to learn that she's the secret in not just all the mantras, as I just chanted, but in every word. She's the inner meaning, she's the outer meaning, she's the thing being inferred, like an object or a particular teaching or a particular truth. And she's the one that then, when brought forth, especially consciously, will destroy karmas of different kinds. I mean, by karmas here we're talking about evil, bad, mixed karmas are also responsible for a lot of problems. So all of this will destroy, if not destroy, diminish the effects of actions done, activities done by people who are, as Krishna says in the Gita, doing this in a tamasic or a rajasic state of mind. You want to make sure all actions that you do or undertake, this would start with thought, because thought is father to the deed. thought, and then it trickles down and out towards your thinking process and into actions, and then right on down to the objects, which are also made of particles of thought or intelligence, and in a solidified form, that we do all of this in at least a very balanced state of mind, so that thought, word, and deed come true. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, elephant's tusks come out of its head, but they should never turn and go back in. So there are cases where the tusk will begin to curve and grow back into penetrate the jawbone of the elephant and keep growing, pushing inside, causing great pain. We know that as a mad elephant or a rogue elephant. So if you use that analogy in terms of a man's words, he's meaning that the words that come out should be true and should be right and should hopefully be even dharmic, or immersed, ingrained with that jnana wisdom. We call it atma-jnana in our tradition. So that everything that's said, even if you have to come and use the mundane level of words, everyday words with people in your life, that there will be that hidden presence of Shakti power underneath everything you say and behind everything that you do. This is one way to how to become conscious of consciousness, or aware of awareness. So in a 1-hour class, I'm also attempting here to keep my preambles to these subjects shorter, and the charts will be less, because we want to show just specific charts that fit inside of this hour offering, which we can render quickly and put up on our sites that we use, and our wisdom websites, and some on YouTube and so forth that you can look into. So we will be able to put out a series of these, in this case a 3-part class, this Sunday, next Sunday, and the following class, on mantra and how it destroys karmas. I had been giving it some thought as to how to make a chart that was illustrative of a power actually coming out from inside and penetrating all levels of consciousness and destroying these karmas. You say, well, where are karmas stored? In the mind. How do they get formed? By desires and activities of different kinds. And where do they come from? How do they get alleviated? Through nadis. You could say, well, go to your guru and say, well, I have karmas in my nadis. I think if he knows anything, or she knows anything, they'll be aware of what you're saying. I have karmas in my nadis. So he'll ask you, where? What nadis? Your physical nadis? Nadis are nerves, by the way, or carriers of energy. Are they in your physical nadis? Are they in your emotional nadis, which for a lot of people nowadays they are? Are they in your psychological nadis, your thinking process? Are they in your philosophical nadis? Because Father of Yoga talked about those too as Bhranti Darshana, things that impede people's higher understanding of philosophical truths, which should just be accepted outright, don't need to be argued or questioned. Or maybe they're in your spiritual nadis, like those blockages, grantis they're called, or knots, in your way of thinking that keep you from attaining enlightenment, keep pushing you back. 1 step forward, 2 steps back is the English modern term we use for Patanjali's word for it in Sanskrit, anavasti tattvani, or alabdha bhumikatva, he says sometimes. These 2 kinds of spiritual impediments. So if you're looking as a karma, just as an evil effect that happened and it's over and done with, you're probably not seeing the full picture yet. Residues of karmas are stored they affect the nadis. I was talking to a medical practitioner the other day who's a holistic healer, and he said, oh yeah, by the time you're our age, Babaji, 60, 70, your nadis are like the pipes of a house. They've got so much water has run through them of different kinds, and so many liquids that they've got covering on the inside of each nerve. And so it's about 50% less of the amount of energy or liquid or whatever it is flowing through your nerves, and your physical nerves, of course, he's talking about, are being impeded and slowed down. So that's called aging, and so forth, gives rise to disease. So eating good foods and juicing and making sure that your food is blessed with mantra before you take it in, and getting good exercise, all these things on the physical level are actually just in the realm of physical karma, and they'll cause a residue. The greatest storage of karma is in the mind, of course, because our lifetimes come out of our karmas. So whatever lifetime we're living in, whatever body, whatever shape the body is in, is only a part of it. But what you're really looking at as you look at a person, or if you look at yourself in the mirror, is your past lifetimes and how they formed your features. The same with animals. How did they get their animal body, insects and so forth? It all has to do with openings, nerves, channels, flow of energy like prana, or lack thereof, or impedance of flow, or expansion of flow, like may our bodies experience great health, may our life force flow unimpeded, may our minds expand in their capacity to know Brahman. That's one of the peace chants. Apyayantu mamangani vak pranaschakshu shrotamatra balamindriyani, all of our senses, cha sarvani. So basically they're talking about this allowance of all natural flow to be flowing through all your nadis. So the last one they mention is, may our mind expand in its capacity to know Brahman. So with that being the case, then we know that there are subtle nerves by the hundreds and thousands in our subtle body, which is in our mind, not in our brain. There are not that many nerves in the brain, but in the mind there are hundreds and thousands. It's a network, and they're not on the physical level. And this is what people are not understanding and not seeing, because they can't see them with the physical eyes under a microscope after a scalpel has done its business. This is all inner life, inner world. So it's all inner flow, or lack of inner flow, if you don't have an eternal life, as Jesus said. You had plenty of prana flowing on the outside with wives and huts and fishes and nets, but you didn't have an eternal life yet. So you had to go out and find this eternal life. It means go in to find this eternal life and open up these nadis, good name in both Vedanta and yoga and in Kundalini yoga, so that this flow can be unimpeded. May it flow unimpeded. Body, energy, and mind. And I added in there emotions, psychological and spiritual too, and also intellectual or philosophical. All these are very powerful ways, and there are also places where karmas tend to jam up inside of a channel, like a dam in a river, or some kind of impedance that's not letting the flow go through as usual. So that's what we mean about destroying karmas with mantra. In today's day and age, they give us the mantra because if there is such a thing as a quick fix, that's it. For people who are seeking God and they're sincere about it, and they also see the world around them as a mirage. Come, friend, the world is but a mirage, and you need to go to the river of Ramakrishna and bathe. A beautiful song I was singing today in the morning. The river of Ramakrishna is a great tributary rolling to the ocean of formless awareness. And these are mantras, these are slokas, these are words. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because people don't have access to time today because of work, duties, and distractions too, that are impeding the flow of all of these realizations. Call them insights for now. So they need something that will get to the root of matter, and that's mantra. Also, I'd say mantra and slokas, because they're both very much the same thing. Sometimes the words are used interchangeably. We usually think of mantra as just one, hopefully one, and not a whole bunch of them necessarily. You're practicing one at a time to dig one deep well, to get to realization of reality. And so that could be your your mantra given to you by your initiatory guru, like taking refuge with the Sufis, or taking hand with the Sufis, or taking refuge with the Buddhists, or getting mantra diksha with the Hindus, with the yogis, and so forth. All of these are commitments, or deeper commitments, to cutting out more time to be able to spend in practice, so that these, as Buddha called them, Dharma drops, will fill the bucket of your intended practice, and you'll have a great store of them. We were talking about the elephant getting its bath late at night, just before the sun goes down. The elephant driver gives it the bath, puts it in the stall, so that it will come out in the morning fresh and clean, because if he gives the bath too early, it just rolls in the dust, and it's dirty all day. And so that means, Sri Ramakrishna's story, that you study all your life, you do deep practices. In this time that you do have, mantra would be the one that's the most powerful and effective and the swiftest, because the other ones you would do would be deep contemplation, memorization, and recitation of the slokas, or of the sutras, of the different scriptures. Another one would be meditating after this great input of insight from the illumined souls has entered in through the channels of your ears, into the subtle ears, into your mind. And then all of a sudden it's in there, you've got it, it's causing you to remember certain things, you're having certain flashes of insight. Now you sit with those insights. You just watch the mind, because it'll render it silent. So it's a way of saying how karmas get destroyed. You can't actually see it when it's so subtle, and sometimes you can't feel the karmas going away. You have to wait and do months of practice, and then all of a sudden look back and say, I don't have that weight anymore. What happened? Well, most people forget that it's because they did practice for months. They all of a sudden say, thank you, God, or isn't God great, or isn't the grace has come upon me? But it was this practice that was mated with grace that caused this openness. And you didn't actually see the karmas go away, because just like you don't see the terrain go by on a train trip. Just all of a sudden you're at your destination. So this is how Holy Mother explained it. And she's really part of the subject. She's really at the core. So this is a quick definition or explanation of how karmas get destroyed by mantra. It's given to us to have a mantra. We repeat it many times, hopefully with deep intensity, with full attention, with full consciousness on it, for a matter of 20 minutes, a half hour, 2 hours, a couple times a day, maybe early morning and late at night before sleep. And this opens up these nadis and channels. You feel much better, so you know they're open. You're living a dharmic life, and everything is flowing well. And karma is coming back at you, or coming back quickly rather than slowly, as Vivekananda mentioned that. The karmas of a more advanced spiritual person come back swift, so they do something, an action that was not in full consciousness, or was inadvertently done, and all of a sudden that day see some effect from it. Oh, I see, I did that, it happened like that. And the same with good actions. But for people who don't have that kind of understanding, it'll take a long time for effects to come back from actions, and they'll be confused by that. They don't know where the source is that it was coming from, so they'll blame it on something else other than their own actions. Blame it on God, blame it on whatever. But Holy Mother says God is not responsible for good and bad actions. That's your doing. So what God does do for us through its divine Shakti is give us these mantras and these teachings, these great slokas, including the words I'm saying right now in the Dharma around Atmagyan, in the Vedanta and in the Tantra, so that we can work these things out as they rise, and then maybe reach a place where we're oblivious to the accumulation of karma. You have what they call in the scriptures colorless karma, neither black or white, nor gray or black and white, but it's colorless. You're acting without acting. And those are, of course, great teachings that lean more toward Advaita Vedanta, or the highest teachings of non-duality. So, since we're talking about Shakti then, let's go ahead and look at a chart or two in the remaining time so that this becomes more, gives us more clarity. And we will have 2 more hours, that is next Sunday and the following Sunday, to continue on with what we don't necessarily complete today. When you're talking about the divine Shakti and practice of mantra, then the great souls have determined that it's in 21 steps, or 21 points, that mantra has its effect on your karma. So you can see there, that's a beautiful collection of malas back there that I took a picture of in India when I was at a shop. And different Rajaksha ones there, and ivory, or bone, sometimes they're even made of bone. So basically you can see that the mala is very important, and you can look at a chart maybe next week about the meaning of the 108 seeds on your mala. Each one of those is a different deity and is connected inward to that deity by a word or a name or a mantra. So you see the outer bead, the outer set of beads has 108, which is an auspicious number. The Guru bead is at top, and then that signifies Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and the holes in the beads signify, the thread that goes through the holes of the beads signify, and we'll maybe look at that next week. But for now, just imagine that each bead also is connected to a deity that can destroy karmas if you connect it that way. So that's why they don't want you just to say the mantra like a parrot. And then you know the famous story in the Gospel from Krishna, just say it like a parrot. Or say the slokas just like a parrot. Or sing a song just like a parrot. Because if we're going to talk about the goddess Sharada, which is her birthday just passed, as the goddess of wisdom, then we'd want to sing to her that way too. Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Jaya Swami Vivekananda, Jaya Shri Raka, Turyananda Yogananda, Om Karima, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada. Along with several other verses that mention Shardananda, Shivananda, Subodhananda, Vijnanananda, Advaitananda, and so forth, Vijnanananda, all the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, all around Holy Mother. So this next chart shows you a picture of her, and this is, in this day and age, this storehouse of Shakti power out of which these great mantras are coming. And you must chant them then with knowledge of the deities. Isn't it true? I just did that every time I sing something or say a mantra or read a scripture. Those are holy utterances, realized, and they have connected to them deep wisdom that will destroy karma. And you have to then connect them also to the holy names. That's what a mantra is, like Om Namah Shivaya. You've got the Om. What to say about that? lots. I'd wait for another class series or retreat for that. And then Namah Shivaya, the name of Shiva. And Shiva himself has the deity and what he signifies. So this is all destroying the karmic, the ill-considered karmas or actions that people have done by putting the name with the form of Lord Shiva, who is the greatest of all destroyers. So there we have the rationale to it, if you need any. So as you see this chart here, let's look at it quickly so that we can show you this 21 point of mantra practice in 4 phases. So when you do the mantra, it might be helpful to know that when you take up a mantra, there are 4 aspects of Shakti who are presiding over that at 4 different stages. And I'll show you a chart on that too, so that you can make these connections deeply. The stages themselves are called Vaikari, Madhyama, Para, and Prashanti, or Prashanti and Para if you want to go in order. So basically, let's hear a brief description by the masters of the art of mantra about these 4 stages. Vaikari is the 4th stage, that is the grossest stage. If you're working from outside in, it represents the articulate form of sound at which stage the mantra charges and purifies the mind, revealing the presence of the Antaryami. Antaryami is the inner ideal seated in your heart, the inner ruler immortal seated in the heart, I've heard it said as. So imagine the power of getting a mantra from a realized soul, that being just the 1st stage of it, going from outside in. So that form of sound, which is gross sound meaning said with physical tongue, heard through physical ears, those are the nadis that it's passing through. But if you trace it back, it's going back, of course, to the mind and to the words themselves. The sound Brahman is then perceived, one's awareness intensifies, the breathing stills, Kundalini rises, and inner visions occur. Probably not a lot of us can say, well, that happened to me right when I got my mantra. It probably takes some time, but there are people who have done mantra in previous lifetimes who, as soon as they're given the mantra, go into a deep state. The Upanishads describe them. Oh, I heard a kettle drum sound like a tinkling of a bell. I heard the sound of a flute. They're even described in the Upanishads sometimes that you have these inner experiences right off the bat. So the mantra is already doing its purificatory work. The next phase, Madhyama, at that stage, which acts as an intermediary between the 4th and the 2nd, Vaikari and Prashanti, represents the 3rd and slightly gross form of sound. So it's more refined form of sound taking inside. Here the seeker perceives the interior realms, but remains clear of them, accesses occult powers, yet resists using them, and feels bliss, but rises above it. So this is the seeker who's guided by an adept guru in the practice of mantra, is very careful of feelings of bliss, of powers that come their way, and also observing these inner realms, these kingdom of heavens within you, observing them when they appear inside of you, because that's where they are. So it's sometimes quite a shock to people to know that all of this lies within. The kingdoms of heaven lie within. My father's mansion has many rooms, or my father's castle has many mansions. However you want to say that, this is all indicative of these inner realms inside that are opened up by a mere word out here. So that's the signifier out here, and it has stages of its appearance. So now we've looked at the 1st and 2nd stage. We're going from the outside in as if we received the mantra, like Om Sharada, Jaya Sri Ramakrishna. Those are both pre-initiatory mantras that I received when I was young, so I put them in a song. Om Sharada, Jaya Sri Ramakrishna, Om Sharada. So if you say anyone's name, they'll look at you It's the same if you say their name intensely enough inside, they will look at you. Their attention will come upon you. And then this is where insights and realizations come from. Straight from the Divine Mother of the Universe and her grace. Call it grace if you want, but you had to raise your sail to catch that wind of grace, didn't you? So mantras working swiftly and quickly in that way. Let's look at the third stage in our brief class here, where we're quintessentializing all these teachings down into 1 hour. So Prashanti is next. Prashanti represents the subtle and second stage of sound. Om, perceived earlier, now turns to light or jyoti. An indrawn state of witness is prevalent there, and the soul experiences pure awareness beyond bliss. Prashanti Vak is divine vision, the supreme speech of the Vak Devi. Vak means word, the goddess of the word. It's unmanifested and full of spirit. The seers and gods use it for envisioning everything. Pervading all, it extends from Muladhara up to Saraswara. So you can see how intense it is as the word reaches itself back to its source. And of course we're looking at this from outside in. If you went furthest in, then para would become the initial stage. It's actually the final stage when you're using the mantra to effect realization. Mantra yoga it's called. So to describe para, which means supreme, the initial state beyond images, the initial state beyond stages, but it is beyond images too, para represents the primordial hub of potentiality and divine emanation and expression, including worlds, beings, words, and their fractions, manifest as atomic centers of consciousness. Para is the unity existing in all diversity, directly realizable through the awakening and upward ascent of Kundalini Shakti. Shiva, Chit Shakti, and Prana Shakti are all associated with the Para Vak. So these are why you're going to need to make an introduction to these deities within you. It's called deity yoga. So it can't be left aside and then hope to get to non-duality by jumping the gods and goddesses or so easily going beyond the ancestors or transcending the Trinity. These are all great tasks, actually great victories, as we will see in one of our other charts. The 7 victories are in Tantra are granted by this kind of ascension, inward ascension we call it. So the quote down here by the mother, she says, "I gave you initiation because you show signs of being a noble soul. See that you do not betray me. You are perfectly satisfied if you get the mantra, but you never think of the consequence." The consequence means here, you never used the mantra after she gave it to you, so then you're expecting karmas to be alleviated, and it doesn't happen that way. The other consequence is if you use the mantra, you've taken on a great responsibility for your own spiritual life, and you need to keep it up. So it goes both ways. It cuts both ways, this sword of wisdom in mantra yoga. That's where further explication can be gotten by going to the guru. Now let's look at the top quote to finish this chart. All the alphabets and their corresponding fractions, and the mantras comprised of them, are all intrinsically connected with the self. Due to the influence of nescience, Maya Shakti covers their true meaning and function, and the eternal self takes on a sense of individuality and assumes atomic proportions. That's called sense of individuality, ego, body mechanism, atomic proportions, matter. Recitation of the mantra wakens the power inherent in the word and restores meaning, thus wisdom. So if you lost the meaning of your life because you took on a body and you came to the earth full of material objects, you got attached to them, you forgot yourself. It's really that simple. Now, it's also simple to regain it. Remember the self. Best of all, if you remember the mother. That's why I chanted at the top of this class, they thought about and came to know the divine Shakti, the imperishable Shakti, by meditating upon her. Te Dhyan Yoga Nugato Pashan Devatma Shakti Svagunayar Nagudam. She's covered by the gunas, but you can, and she's covered herself by that, but she gives you the mantra by which to lift off those coverings so you can see her. And she can operate inside of these centers called chakras in Kundalini Yoga. We'll look a little bit at that soon. Let's shift to the next chart so that we get the first part of these 3 classes done in an hour each. The next, but those are, of course, if I had more time, I would be explaining those with other charts. But that's enough to have down on recording so people can look back on this and go forward with their spiritual practice. Now back to the chart with the malas in the picture in the centerpiece. There is 21 points to the mantra practice, but don't forget this, because what we just did, this previous chart, was look at the descriptions of how these 21 points happen in 4 phases. Those 4 phases are here, listed on this chart. Starting down the left, across the bottom, up the right, there are 21 points of mantra practice, beautifully put down for anyone who wants to know. And in the tradition of Kundalini Yoga and Mantra Yoga, which is basically leaning more towards a tantric, very associated with Vedic, but leaning more towards a tantric rendering. So let's look. We can see here that Vaikari stage we read about. It's the 4th stage. It charges and purifies the mind. It connects you with the Antaryami. It intensifies your awareness. Your breathing can come to a stillness. And inner visions occur. I'm reading this back to you because you're not seeing that chart yet, because it's probably been replaced on your screen by this chart. So I'll read it back to you in a synopsis. That's what we just read as its description. Let's see how they put it point by point. First of all, receive a mantra from a guru. It's not going to work or work very well if you don't. So I hear that a lot from people. I got a mantra from a book and it didn't seem to work. Or can I get a mantra from a book? Well, there are, if you count slokas, there are hundreds and thousands of mantras in each book, because each sloka is kind of a mantra, because it has some sort of connection to some aspect of wisdom, like Shiva or Vishnu or Brahma, or a great rishi like Pipalada or Yagyavalkya. There are so many ways in which these names of great souls are associated with mantras that they've used to get their illumination, and those have come down to us as scripture. So they're seeing the whole thing as pregnant with Shakti power, the Vakdevi. It's all infilled with the wisdom mother. That's what gives meaning to a word. Have you ever thought of it? Gee, what's that meaning word? What's that word mean? See, what's that word mean? Everyone asks, what's the meaning in that word? See, they always ask, what's that word mean? And then it goes right by them that the actual meaning in the word is the mother. So she's that swift and that quick. She outstrips all that runs, the scriptures say, the Upanishads. The Chitti Shakti, father of yoga, called her. So receive a mantra from a guru, because that guru should know what it means, should be able to transmit it to you. I'm not talking about spiritual marketeering where they're selling mantras and they're not telling you what the meaning is, and they're not giving you a practice around it. They're not telling you what AUM in your mantra means, for instance. There's a meaning to AUM. That is usually the first word of your mantra, if it's a mantra that's in Tibet, India, or yoga and so forth. It always usually starts out with that key Bijam to Brahman, called Om. You have to know this, and they have to teach you this. And so receive a mantra from an authentic guru. If I had more room there, I could have written that. This is still at the Vaikari stage, from the outside in. Then it animates the chitta. The chitta is your thoughts, basically, are your thoughts. And so some people's thoughts are very sluggish and slow, right? Or sometimes even your thoughts may be slow in the morning. I must go get my coffee. No, you actually have to go get your kali. It's what you need to do and get that chitta animated, because you don't need any intoxicants or substances if you have Shakti in you. So you invoke her first. That's why you get up in the morning, invoke the Divine Mother, wisdom, pranam to her, ask her to awaken your consciousness. And these are words you're relating to her, and she's in those words. So remember, you connect yourself to her. And the connecting point, as just said, the intermediary point, is that profound mantra you got from a teacher, or those great slokas that you're memorizing, swadhyaya style in yoga, in the Yoga Sutras. So that's all very important. Animate the chitta then, wake up your thoughts, then awaken mind to the antaryami, the inner ruler, immortal, seated into your heart. So this is already there before you even find a mantra and a guru. This is your inner self. This is your Atman. This is your Buddha nature. This is your Busho. This is pure conscious awareness, but it happens to be associated with a specific kind of form. It's God with form, Sarupa, and Salokya, and Sayujya, and Samipya. It's called in 4 different ways. It's associated with a form. So make sure you see that form. That is your own true nature, your antaryami. Antar means inner. Then, after you do these, anahata sound is detected. Anahata means actually Brahman. It's the sound, the anahata dhvani, it's sometimes called. It's the actual sound itself. And right now it has, for you, fortunately, both a gross and a beginning to become subtle form. So you have to say it out into the atmosphere and hear it. Jai Shri Rama Krishna, Om Shri Sharda, Om Namah Shivaya. And then not just let it go out there, its vibration, and dissipate somewhere, but know that it came from a source, and that you're very, very fortunate to have an exterior sound that can affect others, like the guru to the disciple, and can also affect yourself when you hear yourself say it. But it also has an inner meaning, and that's leaning more towards this second stage. That anahata sound is detected as the buzzing of thousands of bumblebees. If you've ever been nearby a tree full of bees, and you just sit there for a while, and it's just this deep hum. Sometimes they describe it like that. And it's just like the light that happens sometimes, like the sound of a deep kettle drum booming in the distance. That sound will also happen. That's very much connected to mantra. Sight and sound are 2 very powerful indicators for the presence of intelligence, or the presence of consciousness. Jyoti and Shabda. We'll get to that in a minute. The 5th is thoughts begin to dissolve. This is, remember, a point by point that happens to you when you get a mantra from an ascetic teacher and begin to use it and keep it up. See my seminar in 2 weeks, and we'll talk about that. How to follow through with these practices so that you don't just hear them all of a sudden and walk away and not realize them. Like, you got out, you arrived at the sands, the beach, you heard a distant sound. Boy, that's amazing, I wonder what that is. And then you walk away. So you never see the ocean behind all those sand dunes, because you never took the time to walk and trudge across the ground, across those sands. So that's what happens to people who betray me. You see, I gave you the mantra because I thought you were a noble soul. Maybe you fooled her and you weren't such a noble soul. I've had that happen to me, I can tell you. And then you walked away, and betrayed this great trust of getting a mantra from an illumined soul. What to speak of from the Divine Mother of the Universe, my God. So all of this around this importance of the first stage of a 4-fold stages of 21 points of mantra practice. There you have it, thoughts dissolve. So, boy, you've been, going to this religion and that path and this guru, and they've all been telling you, quit thinking, and you've never achieved it. here you are. It happens as a matter of course early on when you use the mantra given to you by an illumined soul. 6, intensification of awareness happens. So what had to get out of the way in order for you to have this intensification of your own vibration, your own sacred vibration humming in there? You couldn't hear it. It was that voice in the distance that they talk about. A voice in the wilderness. Beautiful piece of music I used to play on the cello, named that. Voice in the wilderness. So that's what you're beginning to see in this. What right now, because you haven't come upon the lokas yet, right? Because it'll reveal to you certain words. What happens right now is you're just beginning to hear the sound of those worlds. They each have a vibration, a chakra, if you wish, and there are many of them clustered around one particular inner atmosphere, inner location. 7, breath becomes equalized. So what? You've gone and you've done your Hatha Yoga asanas and they've told you to huff and puff your lungs and it never worked for you, or you got dizzy and thought you had samadhi. What nonsense. Here's how to actually neutralize the breath. You take the mantra in, follow the tradition, go step by step, your thoughts dissolve and you stop breathing. It's just like going to sleep at night. Do you think when you go into sleep tonight, gee, I'm going to stop breathing now? It just happens to you. In deep sleep, it's called. So you need to do this consciously. You need to breathe until vibrations of your mind stop. Well, this happens in the other way. Vibrations of the mind stop, called thoughts. The intense level of your consciousness emerges out of that, like an ocean after a storm, no waves. And then there is this beautiful light of consciousness, or the beautiful sound, distant sound of the primal unstruck sound of the word. Kundalini rises then. That's where she's awakening and rising. And if you want to look at this in another chart, this all has to do up to this point with the first 3 chakras. There's another chart I'll show you next week. Be on hand for it. So you get this full mantra transmission and how it destroys karmas, either immediately or over time. That basically, this is what's going to happen when the 4 aspects of Shakti awaken at 4 different levels of your chakras. The first 3, the second 2, the third, and the last. We'll see that soon. So she's beginning to rise here is the point. She hears and sees Shiva at the crown chakra, so she's on her way. You better cling to her skirts, you see. So you can take that ride with her. The 9th and final stage, or final point we should say, of this first stage of Vaikari, is sounds and visions start to occur. And that's where she says here, be careful not to get off base with occult powers, visions of worlds, and feelings of early bliss. That's why Father of Yoga said there are 4 impediments, right, to your meditation. One of them is bliss. So you'll get this early sound, early sight. You say, well, I arrived at the 3rd eye, didn't I? No, your consciousness just got a glimpse of that because she was rising. She gave you an early experience of a 3rd eye opening. It doesn't mean that you're there, because if you're there, the worlds wouldn't be here still. Your body wouldn't be around you. You'd be in a transcendental state. The worlds all go away at that high level. So you're moving through them now. You see. And that's how you get past the ancestor realm, so you won't be reborn again here. And that's how you get beyond the gods, because the gods are actually your servants, you're not theirs. And that's how you get to the Trinity and beyond, to the Word. This is all an inward ascension that's very important, and it's a journey that's been taken by hundreds and thousands of souls, particularly in India. They've left behind a great record of it. So that's the first stage, and we've accomplished it in enough time to get into the second stage, which is called, remember, Madhyama. So Madhyama, to remind you, slightly gross form of sound persists. One perceives these inner worlds but remains clear of them. Occult powers start to come, but resists them because it's a deterrent, it's a distraction. And then bliss starts to happen, and the Guru tells you, hold on there, don't lose yourself yet. There's more karmas to come that will ruin your bliss later if you don't take care of it now. So this is all point by point. How does that happen? Because there's only 4 stages in the Madhyama stage, 4 points. Perception of inner realms, so you're actually beginning to see those kingdoms of heaven within you, because they don't just start to exist when you die and cease to exist when you're born. They're always there. And many people are coming out of them to take a body through the ancestors. And so these inner realms have to be espied. Oh, I see, all the worlds are within me. All knowledge lies within me. The deities, all within me. All these sacred slokas have come from within me. My family, the great souls, all within me. See, I am that is where you're headed when you have this view of inner Prakriti. And how Divine Mother is conducting and overseeing all the realms of the Devas and Devis and the ancestors and the celestials and the angels and the demigods and the asuras and so forth and so on. So then after that, what happens across the bottom, the nadis are clearly heard. The nada is clearly heard. So that's nada is another sound word for anahata. That's the sound, its flow of Shakti is putting off, like bees are putting off that humming sound. So the Shabda Brahma, the anahata, the nada, those are all words that are fairly synonymous with one another that have to do with this divine sound. So that becomes to become prevalent over the light. Even people who are having inner visions will first probably hear these deep inner sounds. Those ones that are having visions are visionaries. Their consciousness is more visionary. The ones that are proceeding to the word, in the beginning was the word, are mystics basically. And so they're hearing and the others are seeing. Visuals and audibles on an inner level. The next point, there are more than 4, there were actually 5 here. So the third point in this stage is called awareness focuses on Om. So here's a very profound juncture inside of the whole 21 points, is where that is such an attracting sound, like the sound of the ocean in the distance again, that those who are absolutely adamant about reaching the ocean of formlessness will know that the source of all awareness is there, that all the great souls have come out of that and merged back into it. All the worlds and all the beings in the worlds have come out of that word and merged back into it. And there's where they want to make a swift retreat from lower realms and merge themselves in that highest source. Then the next point after focusing on Om is resistance to inner worlds. So that's where in the Madhyama phase, the Mother has told us about that. Be careful of getting pulled into these inner worlds as if they were the ultimate gain. That's what happens to your ancestors. They're born back on earth. So you want to observe these worlds inside of you. You observe Maya, you don't get involved in it. If you do get involved in it, it pulls you deeper into lifetimes, cycles of lifetimes, as are called samsara or Maya. So basically you want to watch that panorama, that inward panorama just flow by and float over it, as it were. Observe it from a distance. And then another thing that will come is these occult powers. You'll want to get down in there and muck it up in some cases. In other cases, you want to get down in there and manipulate it. Prakriti Laya style. That is, there are beings who can create worlds out of unmanifested Prakriti. That is thought power. They'll create whole worlds out of it, trap people in it, and preside over them. Those are called lower gods. Krishna mentions them in the Gita. So you want to go beyond these lower gods and go straight to the source. And so you don't want to get attracted to either these worlds themselves or the powers that are there, which are trying to allure you into name and form. Like a birth in a womb on earth. Krishna says there are many kinds of wombs on earth, but there are also many kinds of wombs in these lower heavens. 14th point of this 21, which is the fourth point of the second stage Madhyama, is that aspirant stays detached from bliss. And of course, I mentioned it, this is where you need a teacher and have to be referring to the teacher constantly for years maybe, so that when these experiences happen to you, because they will have a sort of initial intensity, like was mentioned here, that you have visions early on when you use the mantra, but those will wane. They'll go away after a while, and you wonder what happened. The mantra lost its power, and maybe the path isn't for me, and oh, that guru's not illumined, and other such nonsense going on. So basically, you have to stay with it for a long time if you have received those precious boons of the triple gem, Guru, Dharma, Sangha. And it all supports itself, and they support each other. So that's the final of this final point, 15th point of these 21 points. Stay detached from the bliss that comes from that, and reject the occult powers, and resist occupation in the wombs of beings who are inhabiting these inner worlds, these lower heavenly realms. Let's go on to Prashanti. I told you it was an hour class, but I've given myself an hour and 15 minutes. It's usually what we do before we break for our second half. So we'll go a full hour and 15 today, so that we get these two charts under our belt, in our minds, when we know what mantra really is, and what it does to karmas, and how it does it. In the time you've been listening in this hour, you haven't been accumulating anything but good karmas, for one thing, because your mind has been focused on Atmagyan. It's been focused on Dharma. So how about 24 hours focused on Dharma? Or how about a retreat like we had last weekend, where 3 days were focused all on Dharma? Even our food was taken dharmically. Those are the kind of things that you want to expand, give time to, and then you'll see karmas go away. They'll just disappear. One day I awoke, and my delusion was gone, utterly gone. Beautiful song by Ramprasad Sen in the Hindu tradition. Awoke and my delusion was gone. So all of these things that had been a problem to him were gone one morning, because he had been doing his practice for months and months, maybe thinking along the way, it's not working. And all of a sudden, it's gone, I'm free. Attribute that to grace if you will, but without the self-effort to get you there, it doesn't work. So the Prashanti stage here, and I'll tell you the highlights of it again here, is that it's the third stage from outside in. It's the second stage from inside out, is what that means here. So it now turns to light. So this is where the sound and the light have a divine relationship inside, and where people start to see the light. Departed souls being talked to by Rinpoches or by illumined souls back on earth are telling their devotees after they pass from the body, see the light, go towards it. The Buddha light, the rainbow body, the Brahma Jyoti, the light of awareness. If you see that, go towards it. Try and attain it. Try to immerse yourself in it, because then, of course, all of those karmas will be washed clean. And in the meantime, your mantra is probably going on very intensely inside of that practice while you go into meditation each morning and when you die at the end of your life. It's the same transition into another bardo. So if you prepared for it ahead of time, like the elephant in its hut, late at night, all washed clean, you come out all clean in the morning. So whether you're taking another birth or not, or whether you're immersing yourself in the ocean of Brahman, should you be so high and formless, it really amounts to the same thing with the mantra. So that's why it's beginning to turn to light, you see. And this is where the gods in the higher realms are even using it. You know, so higher realms and worlds, higher chakras are being maintained by that light. So sound, more towards third chakra, the Anahata chakra is named after Om. So that's, you're hearing Om there, but you're beginning to see light at the fourth, fifth chakras. And we'll look at that next week when I show you the four aspects of Shakti that preside over these four stages, which are using these 21 points. It's all very beautiful mantra yoga science. And it's a science of practice that nets results. So the Prashanti stage here is Nada reveals Jyoti, then witness consciousness develops. Sakshi Bhutam, we call that. So you had good practice resisting the worlds in the last phase, right? So you've developed more muscles to stay detached from anything that's happening below or outside of you. So your witness consciousness is getting an injection of Brahmagyan, and it decides it's going to stay up in the air, in higher atmospheres, like a bird. Should I light there? Oh, there might be danger there. Should I light there? Should I take a drink of water? I think I'm just going to stay up here in the air, you see. So witness consciousness, the soul is just floating, as it were, transcendent of all the worlds, and beginning to acclimatize itself to the light of Brahman, the light of consciousness. Wash yourself clean of all karmas, even the most subtle ones. So witness consciousness deserves a whole new chart, which maybe I can show you next week. And finally, experience of pure conscious awareness happens. That's where the real thing happens really for the first time, in real time. Not in time that flows in cycles, but in real time. When we say real time in Vedanta, we mean 1 second, the eternal moment. It's all happening in the eternal moment. Everything outside of that eternal moment is a play. But when the consciousness reaches that eternal moment, it's still. Just like early on it was practicing for that, when the mantra stilled its thoughts, right? And consciousness intensified, like Sri Ramakrishna said, like shooting a gun for the first time. You're shocked. It's that moment of shock taken to a spiritual level where everything is in one eternal moment. So that's what's happening here for the first time, the first real time in that soul's lifetime, is experiencing pure conscious awareness while still in the body. It's not in the body level of consciousness, but the body still remains after that experience. It can be cast away in 21 days, like a leaf in a storm, Ramakrishna said. Depends on if that's what the soul is working hard for, or whether they want to come back into form to help others, or to, again, finish up and neutralize the rest of their karmas. That's the Prashanti stage. Very beautiful with its 3 points, very rich, very explanatory, even with a few words, but why not? Mother's in all those words. The Para stage is the final 3 of these 21 points. Devak Devi resides in all of that. So you can see why, where that's all headed, and why we started ourselves out acknowledging her, like in a song. What we're talking about here is Shakti. She's destroying the karmas through her power words. They're called Bijams. When they're really powerful, and then they're called mantras when you take and put the deities' names with them. That's a lot of power you've got going there, and it's inward power or inner power, and you have to somehow extract it out of things. To use an analogy, like science extracted power out of atomic particles when it learned how to split them. In the same way inward, there's this inner power which is not for destruction, but is for benefit. And you have to find these words, meditate on them, and extract that Shakti power and use it for the highest good of all people. That's what my teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, used to tell us from the podium. Science has exploded the atom and released a great power for destruction, but Sri Ramakrishna came to the world, and he split the curtain of Maya and released a great power for spiritual perfection and realization. So this is the difference between inner and outer power. The Vak Devi resides there. You'll see her, as it were. See her and be her, as it were. And then Rishihood is attained. So you can see we're having a very high definition of what a Rishi is here. In case you thought it was just someone who wrote some scriptures back some millennia ago, you could see that they are with us for the whole trip, for the whole journey, over yugas, from yuga to yuga's end, Sri Krishna says in the Gita. So they're here with us, and they themselves are that very power inside of her words. And they have names that are full of power, like Jesus and Buddha and Krishna, Muhammad. And these are names of power associated with great realized souls who are saying the words of the scriptures and uttering the mantras and chanting the names of the Lord all the time throughout these long cycles of passing time and affecting people by it. See, they're infusing people with Divine Mother wisdom. And the last and 21st step there, as we bring this particular class to an end, everything is seen as mantra at that point. The word is everywhere and in everything. And you know that's her word, so it makes it even more powerful. And that's how you get to such great Advaitic realizations as all is Brahman. That thou art. That is, I am that, and all, and that is Brahman. Everything is Brahman. Because you're seeing that essence inside of it, and the object has been separated from the essence so that you can see the backdrop, the underlying substratum of it all, and let the image come dancing back. It too is just vibration from the word. So it's okay with me because I've seen the essence behind it. In fact, I've learned how to penetrate through appearances, which is the great art of accomplished yogis and yoginis. So with that, we have spent an hour on two powerful charts that introduced us to this 3-class series with the subject of how mantra destroys karmas. So here we will end, and you'll be able to look back on this class before too long if you want to recall these teachings and spend more time with them, because I went a little bit whirlwind through them. We do have recorded some of these before in some of my other classes that could be looked back upon. But nonetheless, we'll be meeting next week at this same time on Sunday to show you a few more teachings, including the one of the 4 aspects of Shakti that preside over the 4 divisions of mantra practice with their 21 points, and show you how this is all integrated and synthesized deep within in this science of mantra yoga that is the best way to destroy kama in this day and age. So here we will then end with a chant. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirma Gomaya, Michorma Amritam Gomaya, Abir Mayeti, Rudrayate Dakshina Mukam, Tenamam Pahi Nityam, Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the entire universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om Japa Hari Om Tat Sat.